Hi again, everyone. Cheryl here. So we're going to be doing something new from Learning Unit 5, which is quite a long section, actually, to be honest. It's on apportionment of overheads. So just while I'm setting up with the sharing of the screen, I'm going to talk my way through what's going on with the overheads. So there are what we call the traditional methods, and there are many of those. For example, the direct method, step method, linear algebraic method, as well as the predetermined overhead rate, which we'll be doing as well. And then a new, more modern system called activity-based costing. So please don't be discouraged. Don't lose heart. The textbook is a bit overwhelming on this one. Okay. But I'm quite sure that your lecturer on campus has explained this section to you quite nice and simply. So I'm just going to quickly take you through it in a practical way, because if you know how to do it and you see a question as it unfolds, you'll realize that it's a whole lot easier than it seems to be in all of the many pages in the textbook. Right, so we have a predetermined overhead rate that we can calculate by saying the budgeted manufacturing overheads divided by the quantity of the base. Then we will work out a rate and we will apply the overheads using that rate. So that can be done in Learning Unit 5 and again in Learning Unit 7 with job costing. Okay. This activity-based costing, however, is a whole different story, but it shares a common feature in that it calculates a rate in a different way, but nevertheless we get a rate. Once we've got the rate, we do the same as with the predetermined rate. We simply apply the overheads. Okay. So the way in which we're going to calculate the rate here is slightly different. We're going to take the overhead cost and divide it by the quantity of the cost driver units. So what's actually going on in this section? Okay. Instead of sharing costs that are generated in departments, ABC says that every time an activity is carried out, it creates or drives a cost. So we're going to have what we call a cost driver, and that is the activity that creates the cost. For example, setting up a machine, painting a product, polishing a product, packing a product, ordering a product. So those are going to be cost driver units. Once we know the quantity of those, we're going to divide it into the overhead cost for that particular activity. Notice I keep saying activity because that's what ABC is all about. Activities, not departments. Okay. And that will then calculate for me the cost driver rate. Then I take that rate for each activity and I apply the overheads. Then I can add to your direct cost and get the total cost. So when we do the predetermined rate or any of the other methods, it is a single rate for a department. In this instance, it's not the case. We're going to have multiple rates for multiple activities. Right. So the activities are easy to spot. They are always provided for you here in the question. So look here, it says the cost pool. So we have machining services, setup costs, order processing, and purchasing. So those are going to be my 4 activities. And I'm going to therefore have 4 cost driver rates. And I need to make a column for each of my activities. Okay. Let's see what's happening here. We've got 3 products in this case. Let's just actually read the question. So we got product M, N, as well as O. We have the number of units that are produced. We have further information on your direct costs. Remember, direct costs are always material and labor. No problem whatsoever with assigning direct costs to products, okay, because they are like variable costs. They are easy to attach to the product. The only problem comes in with the overhead costs, which are your shared costs. And you need to find various ways of apportioning some of the overheads to each of the either departments or, in this case, activities and the products. Okay. Then we've got some information about the machine hours per unit. And that's important because that ties up here with the machining services. Okay. So it is the machine hours that drives the cost of machining, right? And it differs depending on the particular product. Then what else do we have in the second table? Besides the overhead cost, let's actually just label these. This column over here is the overhead cost for that particular activity. This is the cost driver, and then this is the cost driver units. All this information will be provided. Okay. Then some other information underneath. So whereas above, it told us the machine hours per unit, at the moment, we are lacking information about setups, order processing, and purchasing. So if we have a look here, these other three activities, we're needing to know the quantity of the cost drivers for each of the products. And I need to know that when I do my application of the overheads. So here is the information pertaining to the number of setups, customer orders, supplier orders on a product by product basis. Okay. We can't use these quantities here because that's the quantity for the period. We need to know specifically for each of the products. Okay. Why? Because my question says calculate, etc., for each product. That's why it's very important. I need to know what is the overhead cost for product M and for product N and for product O. And then what is the rest of my question? I'm wanting to work out the total, not per unit, total, so that's important, product cost. So remember from learning unit 4, apologies for the mistake, learning unit 4 where we did product cost. We do it again as part of learning unit 6 when we do the production cost statement and the notes, and again in learning unit 7 when we do job costing. So what is product cost? It's the total of your direct material plus your direct labor plus overheads. So it's the issue of the overheads that will determine how we do things. Okay. So we have many different ways of apportioning the overheads. What we're doing in this question is using activity-based costing to apportion overheads. Remember, of course, that you could use direct step linear algebraic method, or you could use predetermined overhead rate. But we are doing activity-based costing, so I need to calculate before we can do anything. Let's just write that up. Step 1. What is step 1? We can't do a thing unless we calculate the cost driver rates for each of the things. So that's going to be the first thing that I'm going to talk you through. So remember, we have got 4 activities. So have a look over here. Going to have a column for each of my activities. So here we go. What do we have? Machining, setups, order processing, and purchasing. If we look down here straight away, I've calculated a cost driver rate. Now, where did it come from? Like I said to you before, but let me just type it for you here. How are we going to get the rate? Is we're going to take the, just have to abbreviate, overhead cost, and we're going to divide it by the, I think I'll fit it in, cost driver units. So let us see how we're going to do that. We're going to come to our second table over here. These are my overhead costs for each of the activities. Then what do I need to do? Pop along here. From there, I need to go here because there is the cost driver units. So for machining, for example, it will be 856,800 Rand divided by the total number of machine hours of 1,008,000. Let's do order processing. Overhead cost of 374,400 divided by the number of cost driver units. And what is the cost driver? It's the number of customer orders. That's the activity. How many? 76,800. So all I do is I divide the cost driver units for the period into the overhead cost for each of the 4 activities separately, and that allows me to calculate a cost driver rate for each of the activities. So let's do that. And what do we have? It's important that you pay attention to what the cost driver is. So don't just get an example here for machining of 85 cents. Pay attention to the 85 cents per machine hour. When it comes to the setups, don't just think 50 Rand, but 50 Rand per setup. And similarly for the other 2 activities. Now, why did I need to stress that? So when I come to do my applying of the overheads, I need to take the rate and apply it to whatever the cost driver is. That's why it's important if it's machine hours, number of setups, or number of orders. Okay. It will all become clear now in a minute. So let's get on with the question. The question asked for, just a reminder, the total product cost for each product. So see what I'm going to do here. I'm going to have a column for each of the products, M, N, and O. And I'm going to do the direct cost as well as the overheads. So where am I going to find the information about the direct costs? Up here in table number 1. And it even tells us that it's material and labor cost. So we're going to take those 3 amounts. We don't do anything with them. It's allocated. And then we're going to take the cost driver rates that we've just worked out, and we are going to apply the overheads. Then when we've got that, we add it all together, and that will give us the total product cost per product. Okay. So here we go. Pop in the direct cost. Notice here with the overheads, it's not one single amount like in the traditional methods. See what we've got here. We have got 4 overhead amounts because we've got 4 activities. So let's do them one by one, starting with machining. I think what I will just do for you here is product M and O. I'll leave you to do N. Otherwise, it gets very repetitive. So long as you understand the process involved, it's all the same. So let's see how we're going to do activity number 1, which is the machining. So the first thing we need to know is what's the rate? I've just worked out the rate, 85 cents per machine hour. So obviously what I need to do now, when I come to, let me just type that for you here. When we apply the overheads, what do? It's the rate times what? The quantity of the cost driver. So we saw with machining, it's driven by machine hours. And most importantly here, we must take the total quantity. So this information for the moment here is a bit incomplete. These numbers over here, why can't I use those? Because that says per unit. I must have for the total number of units. So let's just do machining because that's the most difficult actually out of all of them. Okay. You would do the same if there were labor hours included for maybe assembling or something like that. Yeah. So we're going to have to work out the total number of machine hours for product M. So 1 hour a unit times the 30,000 units gives me 30,000 hours. So I've got this sorted. Now to get the amount for machining, I must times it by the rate. So let's have a look. There is my total number of machine hours times the rate above of 85 cents. That's where we get 25,500. I said I would also explain to you product O. Let's have a look there. How many machine hours in total for O? 2.5 hours for a single unit multiplied by 36,000 units will give me total machine hours. What rate am I going to use? The same one. Notice that there's only one rate for a machine hour. The only thing that differs is the number of machine hours per product. So there we go. We're going to take that 36,000 units of O times 2.5 hours per unit times, it's a bit cut off, sorry, on the edge, 85 cents. Gives me a total 76,500. So notice that the rate is always the same, 85 cents. The only thing that differs is the number of machine hours. Right, let's get on to the next one. Activity number 2 is setups. So we've got here the rate of 50 Rand, but it's 50 Rand per setup. So let me then use N as an example this time. I'm needing to find the number of setups for product N and multiply it by 50 Rand. So let's come up here. So we're looking for product N, number of setups. There we have 480. So 480 over here times 50 Rand gives me the setup cost of 24,000. How are we going to do the other two? Let me do M this time. We have 288 setups for product M times 50 Rand. Over there gives me 14,400. You can do the same for O. In fact, there's the same number of setups as N, so the answer is the same. Next activity, ordering. So we got to check up here. What is the cost driver for ordering? It's number of customer orders. So I need to find the customer orders for each of the products, and that's in my table number 3. So let me this time do M and N, just varying it each time. So how many customer orders are there for product M? We've got 19,200. When I apply, I need to multiply by my cost driver rate for orders, which is R4.88. So just a reminder over there. In the first table in my workings, I got R4.88 per customer order. So irrespective of which product I'm doing this for, the rate is the same, but the number of customer orders varies. So for M, we said it was 19,200 times 488. Then let's do the same for N. The rate is the same, 488. And for O, rate is the same, but the number of customer orders is different. So those are the respective numbers. On to the last of the activities, which is purchasing. So what is going to determine the cost of the purchasing activity? Over here, it tells me the number of supplier orders that the business places. So when I know the number of orders for each of the products, I then take that and multiply it by my rate that I worked out for purchasing. So let's find that first. Purchasing over here, R7.50 per order. Now let's come up here and let's do product N and O. So number of supplier orders for N is 9,600, which we will multiply by R7.50, and that will give me the amount of the purchasing overhead for product N. Lastly, how am I going to get the same for product O? I'm going to take the cost driver, which is the number of supplier orders, 10,080, multiplied by my rate of R7.50 over here, is going to give me the purchasing activity cost for product O. Then lastly, I simply just need to add it all up to get the total product cost. So just a reminder, I'll do it for the one in the middle, product N. Just, I think, because you might be able to see that one the easiest. What are we going to do? We're going to take the direct cost, which is the material and labor, and then we're going to take the overheads, and 4 of them. Machining, 61,200, setups, 24,000, ordering, 93, lastly purchasing, 72. Add it all together and I get my total cost for the product of 1,450,896. Right, so that in a nutshell is activity-based costing. I think it's got a bit of a misleading acronym, ABC, because you can't exactly say it is as easy as ABC. But nevertheless, I hope I've been able to significantly simplify the section for you. So please have a look in the textbook and practice the questions. There are quite a few of them there in the book. Notably, let me actually find one. They're all scattered all over the place here. I think it's, sorry, I'm just, excuse the noise there, flipping through the book. 513 and 515. So maybe you could do that. Let me just type it here for you. Practice questions 5, 13, and question 5.15. Let's make it a bit bigger so you can see. So that, folks, is the end of activity-based costing. Enough from me. Until the next recording. So, cheers for now. Bye. Oh my